Get the unmissable news stories of the day.
This is the Beijing Hour.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host.
Tian Lu with you on this Friday, March the 20th, 2026. You're listening to the Beijing Hour, coming to you live from the Chinese capital. On today's program, the World Trade Organization warns that the Middle East tensions could threaten global trade and growth. U.S. President Donald Trump has hosted the Japanese Prime Minister at the White House as Washington pushes its allies for more support to secure the Strait of Hormuz. And China's second large cruise ship has undocked in Shanghai as the country expands its cruise tourism sector. In business, China's loan prime rates remain unchanged. In sports, new Asian records at the China Open Swimming Championships. In culture and entertainment, China recognizes a new national historical and cultural city in the southwest. Now checking today's top stories. The World Trade Organization warns that prolonged high oil and gas prices will further slow trade growth. In the report, the WTO says trade growth in goods would drop to 1.9% this year compared to 4.6% in 2025. The report also says global GDP growth will dip slightly from 2.9% last year to 2.8% in 2026 and the year after. The WTO warns that these baseline projections could deteriorate if the Middle East conflict continues to disrupt energy markets. Global energy prices are rising, markets are slumping, and the Iran war continues. Brent crude has risen above $119 per barrel after attacks on Iran's South Pass gas field, the world's largest gas plant in Qatar, and oil refineries in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. Prices have crossed the threshold for the second time this month, but eased after the Trump administration took steps to expand supply. The Wall Street Journal reports Saudi officials have projected that oil prices could soar over $180 per barrel if disruptions continue until late April. Markets have also priced in inflation risks from the energy price shock, pushing U.S. yields higher. U.S. stocks have closed lower, with the small-cap Russell 2000 index down more than 10% from its January high. The Middle East conflict is disrupting the fertilizer trade, posing a threat to India's agricultural sector. The South Asian country is the world's second largest fertilizer consumer. Local farmers fear that they will feel the effects if the war continues, as costs will go up during the coming summer sowing season. Ravinder Bawa reports from Delhi.
As farmer Deshpal Dahiya gets ready to tend his crops in the field, he is worried. The fear of a shortage of fertilizers in the upcoming summer season threatens not just the yield but also his livelihood. The Iran, US and Israel war has disrupted the supply of fertilizers, raising import costs for buyers like India.
I want to request the government to make alternative arrangements, as a shortage of fertilizer will lead to food shortages. If we don't have enough nutrients for the soil, the yield will be affected. Less production will lead to a food security crisis in the country.
India's food security is heavily dependent upon fertilizer supplies from West Asia, making it vulnerable to disruptions in the region. With no end in the sight to the escalating conflict, the fertilizer crisis is deepening.
There will be a major shortage of DAP, an important ingredient during rice sowing. Urea will also be in short supply as the amount we manufacture requires a large amount of gas. With the gas supply affected, urea production will be low.
We have already been facing a shortage of fertilizers. We don't get them when we want. The government has already put a cap on the supply. If the conflict continues, then the farmers will face problems and the rates might go up.
According to the officials, India currently has sufficient fertilizer reserves. In a few weeks, the summer sowing season will begin, raising demand for fertilizers. The government has a short window to find solutions if the war drags on.
This is the time that Government of India has to look for solutions. So this is really that moment that when you need to basically set up a high-level committee and sit down and figure out what are you going to do if you don't have enough urea.
Farmers like Dahiya are watching the war closely, knowing their future depends on a smooth supply of fertilizers. They expect a timely government intervention to safeguard livelihoods and agricultural stability.
That was Ravinder Bawa in India. Israel has launched more attacks on Tehran, targeting what it calls infrastructure of the Iranian terror regime. Iranian state TV says the spokesman of the Revolutionary Guard Corps, Ali Mohammad Naini, has been killed. The strikes came a day after US President Donald Trump told Israel not to repeat his strikes on Iranian natural gas infrastructure. The Iranian foreign minister warned of zero restraint if the country's energy facilities are targeted again. Meanwhile, CNN reports that a US F-35 stealth warplane was hit by suspected Iranian fire and made an emergency landing at a US air base in the region. The incident would mark the first of its kind since the Iran war began. The judiciary of Iran has announced the execution of 3 men detained in the nationwide protests in January, the first such sentences known to have been carried out. The 3 people allegedly stabbed 2 police officers to death during the protests. Demonstrations over the depreciation of the rial swept cities across Iran from late December to January. They escalated into clashes that caused casualties and damage to public property. Foreign ministers of 12 Arab and Islamic countries have met in Riyadh to discuss regional security and stability amid the conflict in Iran. Participating countries, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Egypt, have issued a joint statement calling on Iran to halt its attacks and not to restrict shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. They have also condemned Israel's expansionist policy toward Lebanon and reaffirmed their support for Beirut. European leaders have discussed the Iran conflict and the rising energy prices at a summit in Brussels as they are hunting for quick fixes to the price spike. William Denslow reports from the Belgian capital.
The United States has called on its allies, including those here in Europe, to do more when it comes to support in this conflict and to get the Strait of Hormuz, this critically vital waterway, back open. But here at this meeting of European leaders, very little appetite to do so. We've heard from Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, saying that they have no intention to provide any kind of concrete involvement until the guns are silenced. We've also heard from Kaja Kallas, the EU's top diplomat, saying that she wants to see an exit, not an escalation. Also, strong rhetoric from Pedro Sanchez, Spain's Prime Minister, who has long been perhaps one of the most vocal critics of the war here in Europe. He once again provided a sharp rebuke to the President Trump's actions.
This is a very defining moment for the European Union, and I think that we need to send a clear message to our citizens and the rest of the world that Europe is with multilateralism and is with international law, and we are against this war. We are against this war because it's illegal. There's no reason behind it.
And energy prices very much in focus for leaders. There have been discussions on short-term fixes to help Europe absorb the shocks that we've seen as a consequence of this conflict, despite the fact that most of Europe's LNG, liquefied natural gas, comes from the likes of the US and Norway. Europe, of course, not immune from these global rising prices. Some governments have accused others of using this energy crisis as an excuse to soften, to water down green climate policies going forward. One clear message from European leaders is that the EU must stay the course when it comes to its ability to provide more renewable energy and to be more self-sufficient in its energy needs going forward.
That was William Denslow reporting from Brussels. The US has signaled a prolonged war in Iran with a shift in focus to the Strait of Hormuz. The Pentagon is seeking billions of dollars in funding from Congress to expand its campaign against Tehran. Jim Spellman reports from Washington, D.C.
At the Pentagon Thursday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the U.S. war in Iran is far from over.
To date, we've struck over 7,000 targets across Iran and its military infrastructure. That is not incremental. That is overwhelming force applied with precision. And again, today will be the largest strike package yet, just like yesterday was. As I've said from day one, our capabilities continue to build. Iran's continue to degrade.
The U.S. focus remains the Strait of Hormuz, a key route for oil that Iran has declared closed to ships from the U.S. and its allies.
The only thing is the Strait. It's very hard. You could take two people and they could drop little bombs in the water and they're holding things up. We don't want that to happen.
The Pentagon says U.S. warplanes and attack helicopters are patrolling the skies over the strait, while bombs and missiles target Iranian assets the U.S. says could be used to block the strategic waterway.
We continue to hunt and kill mine storage facilities and naval ammunition depots. We continue to hunt and kill afloat assets, including more than 120 vessels and 44 mine layers, and the pressure will continue.
The U.S. military effort comes with a high price tag. U.S. media outlets report the Pentagon will ask Congress for $200 billion in supplemental funding.
As far as $200 billion, I think that number could move, obviously. So we're going back to Congress and our folks there to ensure that we're properly funded for what's been done, for what we may have to do in the future.
There will likely be reluctance among Democrats to approve more war funding, and even Republicans have questions.
Are there going to be boots on the ground? How much is this going to cost? To what extent is the Congress engaged in this? And the answer on most of this is, I don't know.
The White House and the Pentagon have been reluctant to provide clear answers to those questions and others, including when the attacks on Iran will stop and what happens after the bombs stop falling.
Now was Jim Spellman in Washington. Coming up, U.S. President Donald Trump has hosted the Japanese Prime Minister at the White House as Washington pushes its allies for more support to secure the Strait of Hormuz.
U.S. tech giant Apple is cutting its App Store fees in China, a rare move in one of its most critical markets. What's driving the change? Who stands to gain the most? And could this be the start of a global rethink of big tech's power? Get these and more on this week's Chat Lounge, wherever you listen to podcasts and on CGTN Radio.
Now it's 13 minutes past the hour. Japanese Prime Minister Sana Takaichi has met with U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House. It is her first trip to Washington since taking office. The three-day visit comes as the U.S. pushes its allies for support to secure the Strait of Hormuz. Japan has agreed to invest up to $73 billion in U.S. energy projects. Walter Morris has more on the meeting.
It's an honor to have you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
The leaders of the United States and Japan sitting face-to-face in the Oval Office. Thursday, U.S. President Donald Trump hosting Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi at the White House. Trump offering a warm welcome ahead of a bilateral meeting and a state dinner. The two leaders discussing a wide range of issues like trade and security agreements between the two nations, as well as the ongoing conflict in Iran.
I really look forward to having our discussion, particularly focusing on our collaboration in economic security in the important areas such as energy and rare earth minerals. And I also look forward to discussing with you how we can make our two economies stronger moving forward.
Shortly before the visit, Japan joined several European countries in a joint statement to say they would take steps to stabilize energy markets and that they were ready to join, quote, appropriate efforts to guarantee safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz.
I expect Japan to step up because, we have that kind of relationship. And we step up for Japan. We have 45,000 soldiers in Japan. We spend a lot of money on Japan.
For days, Trump has criticized NATO allies for not doing more to support the U.S. in efforts to secure the Strait of Hormuz. And Thursday, he repeated previous claims that the United States does not need help.
We don't need much. We don't need anything. I mean, honestly, we don't need anything from Japan or from anyone else. But I think it's appropriate that people step up.
And during the meeting, Takaichi told Trump that Japan's foreign minister reached out to Iranian officials and urged them to reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
That was Walter Morris on the Japanese Prime Minister's visit to Washington. President Trump has drawn parallels between U.S. strikes on Iran and Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor during his meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister.
One thing you don't want to signal too much, when we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right?
Takaichi was surprised by Trump's remarks but remained silent. Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941 was a pivotal moment of World War II, propelling the U.S. to enter the war. Coinciding with Takaichi's visit to the U.S., China has again called on Japan to reflect on and correct its mistakes and refrain from going further down the wrong path. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian said Prime Minister Sana Takaichi's fallacies on Taiwan interfere in China's internal affairs, reveal her ambition of military intervention on the Taiwan question, and pose a military threat to China.
The Chinese side has made clear its solemn position on multiple occasions. Relevant reports show that the international community is increasingly aware of the nature and negative impact of Takaichi's comments and vigilant against the dangerous moves of Japan's provocations. Japan cannot convince the international community or its Asian neighbors with the one-liner that its position on Taiwan remains unchanged.
Lin called on Tokyo to honor the principles set in the full China-Japan political documents and its own commitments and abide by the pacifist provisions in the Japanese constitution. Thousands of Japanese people have gathered outside the House of Representatives in Tokyo in protest of Prime Minister Sana Takaichi's recent push for controversial policies. Some of them expressed opposition to the revision of the country's pacifist constitution and the increase of defense spending.
What is her true goal? I believe it is to enable Japan to take the initiative in waging war or pursuing military objectives more assertively. This is why she is intentionally advocating for a revision of Article 9 of the Constitution.
Takaichi's efforts to revise the Constitution are completely unacceptable. Today, there are quite a few young people here, and I believe they also share a strong sense of anxiety about war. I firmly oppose any changes to the Constitution.
Others also urged Takaichi to respect the Constitution and stop escalating regional tensions.
I hope Takaichi will respect the Constitution first. I believe that adherence is essential for Japan to avoid war, but it seems that the current policies of the Japanese government are increasingly moving us closer to war. The ability to keep our country out of war is a critical issue, and it's something that concerns me deeply right now.
Takaichi has shown no willingness to unite the country. That makes me see her as a leader who fosters division. It fills me with great unease and resentment. I hope she refrains from taking actions that escalate tensions in international relations, particularly in East Asia.
Japan has rejected a U.S. intelligence assessment that says Takaichi's remarks on China's Taiwan region represent a significant shift for a sitting Japanese leader. The Prime Minister has drawn international criticism since she claimed in November that the contingency on the island could constitute what she called a survival-threatening situation for Japan. The comment implies that Japan could invoke its right to collective self-defense and militarily intervene in the Taiwan question. Coming up, China's second large cruise ship has undocked in Shanghai as the country expands its cruise tourism sector.
From epic tales of mystery and magic to accounts of battle and empire, from the verses of ancient poets to the masterpieces of our times. A Light on Literature brings to life China's literary heritage and a look at the world in a new light.
Now it's 19 minutes past the hour. China's second large cruise ship has completed undocking in Shanghai, moving a step closer to trial voyages and final delivery. Shipbuilders say the Eldora Flora City will fully enter the wharf commissioning stage. The operator says the vessel will speed up interior installations and systems commissioning. The ship is able to contain over 5,200 passengers. It is scheduled for delivery by the end of the year and will launch international routes from Guangdong province. Wu Bing has more on the ship's significance on China's cruise industry and the global tourism market.
So we know the first large cruise ship, Adora Magic City, takes Shanghai at its home port and travels to Northeast Asia. And the second one, Adora Flora City, will take southern China's Guangzhou as its home port and explore the southern China market. So this is because the booming trend of Chinese tourists for cruise traveling. I can share with you one number. Adora Cruises, that's China's domestic cruise operation company, it announced its 1 millionth visitor last year. So that's how booming this is. And we believe this is not the end.
That was Wu Bing reporting. For more on this, Zhang Tao spoke to Professor Andy Mock with Beijing Foreign Studies University.
What benefits do you think could Adora Flora City bring to China's tourism sector and consumer spending?
So first of all, this is an enormous vessel. It can hold more than 5,000 passengers with more than 2,000 cabins. But actually, that's not the real story here. So the real story is that cruise ships are the most complex civilian machines in the world. Millions of components. It's basically a city in one system on water. So it has extreme safety and regulatory requirements. So for decades, it was only a handful of European countries that could build these at scale. So what has happened is this, first of all, this is not the first one, it's the second one. And this is why this matters, because the first one showed China can build a very, very complex vessel. The second one shows that China can build the system that builds these complex vessels. So I think what this means then for the tourism industry is, of course, more choices. I think this is a natural extension of China's prosperity. So as people have more leisure time, more disposable income, they're going to want more tourism leisure choices. And I think also from another perspective, this also shows China moving from bulk shipbuilding to really high complexity civilian systems. And cruise ships really are at the top of this hierarchy. And it's also demonstrating that China can deal with systems integration. So it's not just about steel. It's about coordinating the design, the supply chains, the software systems, the hospitality operations. So I think this is an important achievement for China's tourism industry, but I think it is also more generally an achievement for China overall in its demonstrating its ability to construct systems to build at scale enormously complex vessels.
You mentioned it is a complex vessel which demonstrated China's strong shipbuilding capacity. Other than that, what is your overall expectation on China's cruise economy?
I see here that from this tourism economy, again, first of all, this is demonstrating domestic capacity to meet demand. So historically, if you wanted to go on a cruise, it was probably on a foreign ship on a foreign cruise line. But I think what China is showing now that it has the whole capacity to plan the ship, build the ship, operate the ship for Chinese tourists. And of course, I think the next step is that it's going to increasingly attract foreign passengers as well. So we're seeing, especially in places like the United States, being Chinese is cool, right? So many young people are drinking hot water, et cetera. And I think now, again, this is going to be, I think, enormously appealing to people around the world, especially the younger generation. And I think that will be a tremendous boost to China's tourism industry.
That was Professor Andy Mock with Beijing Foreign Studies University. Global business leaders have gathered for the 2026 Shanghai Global Investment Promotion Conference, aligning their strategies with China's next development blueprint. The summit highlights Shanghai's role as a strategic engine driving investment not just into the city, but across the Yangtze River Delta and the nation. EU is once again buzzing with foreign buyers and a flood of fresh orders. The trade hub on the eastern coast demonstrates how China is moving quickly, remaining flexible, and connecting with buyers across the globe. Biran has more.
The crowds are back, and so is the energy. At EU International Trade City, buyers are walking aisles, checking samples, comparing prices and placing orders.
Here you can really feel the vibrant energy of trade. Business people from all over the world are constantly coming and going. And everywhere you turn, you hear different languages being spoken.
EU is amazing for business. Yes, I come here maybe 18 years ago. It's good for business.
We're from Russia, Siberia. This is already our 4th time here. We really like it here. We have very good partners and excellent, high-quality products here.
On the opening day after Spring Festival holiday, the market received about 300,000 visits, up 23% year-on-year. In the first 2 months of 2026, EU's total imports and exports exceeded $12 billion, with exports rising 22.7%. But what is happening in EU is not just about volume. It is about speed, flexibility, and knowing what global buyers want right now.
We've seen a really good trend in trade since the Chinese New Year. There's been a lot of orders coming from South America and South Africa.
Since the beginning of this year, we've had steady demand from Africa and the Philippines. The swimming equipment is tailored to different countries, so market feedback has been pretty good.
Demand is rising from Asia and Latin America and Russia, which are becoming key growth markets for EU. Meanwhile, consumer demand in Europe and the US is moving down from the high-end segment to the mid-range market, where price to performance matters more than ever. That is putting Chinese-made goods in a stronger position. I come to a local yoga wear factory and see a very human scene. Sewing machines are humming non-stop, while workers race against time to finish a new wave of orders. And box after box is being moved out.
After the Spring Festival, we saw a surge in overseas orders, with production booked through May. Since we make sportswear, our main markets are the US and Europe. Our clothes sell very well on overseas e-commerce platforms.
Market watchers say any tariff-related refunds for U.S. importers could quickly be converted into new orders, giving EU exporters another lift. From household items to AI-powered gadgets, buyers come here because they can find almost everything in one place. For traders here, the order rush is a sign that even in a changing global economy, there is still a strong appetite for affordable, fast-moving, made-in-China products. And EU remains one of the places where the world comes to shop.
That was Biran in EU. Chinese heavy machinery manufacturer Zoomlion has inaugurated Phase 1 of its first localized intelligent manufacturing plant project in Europe. The plant is in western Hungary. Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjarto said the project, with a total investment of about $125 million, will create 800 jobs. He said that local companies account for 70% of the plant's suppliers. Now it's 29 minutes past the hour, checking the forecast before the break. Beijing is down to 1 on Friday evening. Saturday will be cloudy with a high of 16. Shanghai will be overcast with a low of 7 tonight, tomorrow cloudy with a high of 16. Chongqing will be overcast with a low of 12 tonight, tomorrow cloudy with a high of 21. Nanchang will see light rain with a low of 10 tonight, tomorrow thunder shower with a high of 18. Lhasa will be cloudy with a low of 2 tonight, tomorrow overcast with a high of 12. Elsewhere in Asia, Islamabad will see light rain with a low of 21 this evening. Saturday will be overcast with a high of 22 degrees Celsius. Now it's time for a short break. So far this hour, the World Trade Organization warns that the Middle East tensions could threaten global trade and growth. US President Donald Trump has hosted the Japanese Prime Minister at the White House. Tian Lu with you. Stay with us here on the Beijing Hour.
Listen up. Can you hear the heartbeat of our world? It's vibrant and pulsating with the essence of life itself. From the stem of trees to the gurgle of rivers. From the silent strength of mountains to the icy whispers of glaciers. Even the solid ground beneath our feet. And right there, in the midst of all, beats the heart of humanity. What if those other heartbeats were to stop? Would ours keep on ticking?
Ever wondered what's actually going on in Africa through the perspective of an African? How are things really going between China and Africa? What's the narrative of this relationship? Well, get a perspective with China-Africa Talk. Hear from African diplomats, entrepreneurs, academics, Chinese natives, and more. Get on our wavelength every week to find out what's real with China-Africa Talk. Find us on your favorite podcast. We'll see you there.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host.
Ken Lu with you on this Friday. Still to come. In business, China's loan prime rates remain unchanged. In sports, new Asian records at the China Open Swimming Championships. In culture and entertainment, China recognizes a new national historical and cultural city in the southwest. To contact us, you can email radio@cgtn.com or follow our X account @cgtnradio. But first, checking today's headlines. China has announced that Vice President Han Zheng will visit Kenya, South Africa, and the Seychelles. His trip will begin on Sunday and last for 9 days. 2026 marks the beginning of China's 15th five-year plan, the 70th anniversary of diplomatic relations between China and Africa, and the China-Africa Year of People-to-People exchanges. China says it hopes to align the 15th five-year plan with development strategies in the African countries, expand cooperation in all fields, and promote the building of a China-Africa community with a shared future. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi says China and the UK should commit to safeguarding the principles of the United Nations Charter and the basic norms of international relations and protecting the foundation of world peace from damage. During a phone call with British Foreign Secretary Vet Cooper about the Middle East, Wang said as permanent members of the UN Security Council, both countries have the obligation to protect international peace and security and should enhance communication. Cooper said Britain hopes to keep close touch with China for an early end to the war and restart diplomatic negotiations. European leaders expressed concerns over the Iran conflict as they met in Brussels to grapple with rising energy prices caused by the war. They urged de-escalation and maximum restraint in the Middle East conflict. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz is one of them.
Wir waren uns im Europäischen Rat einig, die Risiken einer weiteren Eskalation.
We agreed in the European Council that the risks of a further escalation in the region are significant, and the global effects are serious, including in the USA. That is why we all want the hostilities to end as quickly as possible. What we finally need now is the start of a new peace order for the Middle East. The central element must be the security of the State of Israel, but also the security of the Gulf states.
The leaders also demanded the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and a halt of strikes on water and energy facilities. Iranian media say US and Israeli strikes have killed Islamic Revolutionary Guard spokesman Ali Mohammed Naini. The announcement came shortly after Fars news agency quoted the military spokesman as saying Iran has continued missile production despite the ongoing war. The International Energy Agency says initial volumes of oil from emergency reserves are already available on the market. The agency said the overall release of emergency stocks will largely consist of crude oil, while in Europe contributions will primarily take the form of refined oil products. It said this will be complemented by additional production from countries in the Americas. The IEA's 32 member countries agreed last week to release 4 400 million barrels of oil from their emergency reserves in response to disruptions caused by the Middle East conflict. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has confirmed that the Pentagon will ask Congress for more money to wage war in Iran. He did not deny that the funding may exceed $200 billion. Media reports say the number will far surpass the cost of the U.S. military campaign against Iran to date and instead seek to urgently increase production of critical weaponry, as the U.S. and Israel have struck thousands of targets across Iran since the end of last month. It remains unclear how much the White House will ultimately ask congressional lawmakers to approve, as some White House officials do not think the Pentagon's request has a realistic shot of being approved in Congress. The report said the funding request is likely to trigger a partisan battle. The cost of the U.S. strikes on Iran exceeded $11 billion in the first week alone. More than 50 people are injured after a fire at an automotive parts factory in South Korea, with many others still missing. The incident took place in Daejeon, about 140 kilometers southeast of Seoul. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung has instructed authorities to mobilize all available equipment and personnel to save lives. Coming up in business, China's loan prime rates remain unchanged.
The Beijing Hour, your window on China and the rest of the world.
Now it's 36 minutes past the hour, turning to business. Here's Wang Zihao.
Thank you, Tianlu. Stock markets on the Chinese mainland closed lower on Friday. The Shanghai Composite was down around 1.2%. The Shenzhen component decreased nearly 0.3%. Photovoltaic equipment and battery shares were among the top gainers. Elsewhere in Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index lost nearly 0.9%. Japan's Nikkei declined more than 3.3%. China's one-year loan prime rate came in at 3% on Friday, unchanged from the previous month. The over 5-year LPR, on which many lenders base their mortgage rates, also remained unchanged from the previous reading of 3.5%. LPRs reflect the level of financing costs for households and businesses. Interest rates on newly issued loans in China have stayed at relatively low levels. Data from February shows that the weighted average interest rate for new corporate loans was around 3.1%, about 20 basis points lower than a year earlier. The weighted average interest rate for new personal housing loans was also 3.1%, 10 basis points lower than the same period last year. China's Commerce Ministry has unveiled new measures to boost travel services exports and expand spending by inbound visitors. 16 initiatives have been rolled out across 7 areas. These include expanding inbound tourism, making business travel easier, and using cultural and sports events to drive consumption. The measures aim to enrich inbound tourism products, raise service standards for international exhibitions and conventions, and support more international sporting events. They also call for sports event plus tourism package, more performance plus cultural tourism experiences, and the development of international medical tourism brands. China has rolled out a 3-year action plan to accelerate the development of energy-saving equipment, aiming to foster new drivers of green growth and support the country's low-carbon transition. Through the year 2028, the country will strive to achieve breakthroughs in key materials and components for energy-saving equipment and reach internationally leading levels in the efficiency of major equipment, such as electronic motors and transformers. According to the plan, the application of next-generation information technologies, including artificial intelligence, will expand in the sector. Efforts will focus on 6 major categories, including energy-efficient motors and information and communication devices. The Ministry of Industry and Information Technology says it will improve standards. Experts say advancing the development of energy-saving equipment is a key step to improve industrial energy efficiency and achieve China's carbon peaking and carbon neutrality goals. Deloitte China has held its 2026 Multinational Corporations Future Summit in Shanghai. Over 300 global executives, government representatives, and business leaders attended to explore how China's innovation ecosystem is driving the global expansion of multinational enterprises. Xu Yi sat down with David Hale, CEO of Deloitte Asia Pacific, for more insights.
This year marks the inaugural year of China's 15th five-year plan. So how do you foresee China's goals and specific measures to stabilize foreign investment in the next 5 years?
Right now, with the sort of VUCA world that we see, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, Asia is presenting stability at the 15th. And what is interesting, only a little over a decade ago, domestic consumption was only about 40% of China's economy. Today it's basically 2/3, right? And so that's huge. That domestic consumer demand is powering the continued growth of China. And, much has been said, the growth target for China is now 4.5% to 5%. Because China's the second largest economy in the world, 4.5% to 5% translates to $1 trillion a year. That's Malaysia and Philippines added up together. That's essentially, Sweden and Norway added together. In fact, there's just over I think it's about 23 economies in the world that are over $1 trillion GDP each year. China delivers that in growth each year.
And now in recent years, we have observed that some international brands are now reverse exporting the innovation models from China. So is this becoming a new normal?
Look, there's areas where it is simply world-class, world-leading. You mentioned energy. When you think about energy today, particularly renewable energy, China is leading virtually everywhere when it comes to EVs, batteries, wind, solar. China is leading the pack on all of those. But what we're seeing now is a shift from China for China to China for global. A great example would be Volkswagen. We know with their joint venture here with SAIC, take, for example, their latest SUV, built with 3 major Chinese ecosystem partners. We'll see, just as we have with Hyundai, Kia, Tesla, actual innovation from China going to the world. And I think that's a real shift. Many MNCs originally came for cost. They're staying for innovation. Really a number of key ecosystems that are really emerging. Of course, energy, AI, particularly I think in China's case. Of course, when it comes to AI, China and the US are leading. But I think the focus here in China on physical AI, robotics, humanoids, is really an area where China's strongly emerging.
That was David Hale, CEO of Deloitte Asia Pacific. Now, a research team in Shanghai has identified and cloned a longevity gene in wild rice that determines its perennial nature. The discovery could make it possible to transform rice from an annual crop into a perennial one. Scientists say if the trait can be introduced into widely cultivated annual rice varieties, it could produce rice that is planted only once. Under suitable conditions, the crop could regrow each year without repeated planting or tilling, allowing multiple harvests. China is incorporating Peruvian alpaca wool into its luxury market. Peru has a long tradition of using this exceptionally soft and warm wool. Now demand is booming in China. Dan Collins reports from Lima.
Alpacas are specially adapted to the mountains of the Andes, where it's often cold, wet and windy, which is what makes their wool so special. Warmer than sheep's wool and softer than cashmere, the luxuriant fibre makes fine textiles. And for some years now, this unique South American fabric has been making inroads into the Chinese market. Famous for its softness and warmth and immediately associated with the Andes Mountains of South America, the wool of the alpaca is fast becoming one of Peru's most important non-traditional exports. At the same time, China is becoming one of the biggest importers of this unique animal fibre. In 2025, government data showed Peru's exports of carded and combed fine alpaca or llama hair to China topped $62 million, representing around 15% of Peru's non-traditional shipments to that market. It has established itself as one of the most important textile products in bilateral trade. Peruvian exporters, like award-winning Mitchell, are keen to capitalize on the Asian giant's potential.
China is still our target market, mainly for tops, but we hope to enter soon with more yarn so they can get to know our fiber. China already moves a lot of our products.
Growth is sustained. Alpaca fiber exports grew more than 5% last year compared to 2024, in a year in which non-traditional exports to China rocketed by 142%.
We have a free trade agreement with China that allows us to export with zero tariffs, which is a competitive advantage over other countries, as we can offer our products at an attractive price, knowing that this is a high-end product aimed at a more upmarket niche.
Alpaca wool garments represent the opposite of fast fashion, as their quality and sustainability appeal to China's growing middle class.
There was Dan Collins reporting. And our final story, a humanoid robot data training center in Beijing is set to begin its third phase tactile sensing by robots by the end of the month. The center in Shijingshan district focuses on enabling robots to operate in real-world scenarios across many sectors, including industrial production, smart home management, and medical procedures. Covering over 10,000 square meters, the training center is the largest facility of its kind in China, functioning as a school where robots undergo scenario-based learning before deployment.
Thank you very much. That was Wang Zihang with Business. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in sports, new Asian records at the China Open Swimming Championships.
Sideline Story brings you all things sports related. The hottest topics, latest events, juiciest stories, all with a very personal take. Subscribe to Sideline Story Podcast for heated sports discussions covering events that are happening in China and around the world.
Now it's 47 minutes past the hour. Turning to sports, here's Yang Guang.
Thank you, Tianlu. We start with the China Open Swimming Championships in Shenzhen. China's Tang Chen team broke her own Asian record in the women's 50-meter breaststroke twice on the opening day of the gathering, first in the heats and then again in the final. This event marked China's first high-level international swimming gathering held in an open competition format and also served as the National Spring Swimming Championships. Finals were split into Group A and Group B, with Group A featuring the top 8 swimmers from the heats. After breaking her own continental record in the heats by clocking 29.49 seconds, Shanghai's Tang further lowered the mark to 29.44 seconds in the final to clinch the gold. Tang reflected on how to find her rhythm and break Asian record after struggling with illness leading up to the event.
I think I managed to get myself into a good rhythm. I didn't overthink anything or focus too much on the result. I just wanted to take it in stride and focus on the technique I've been working on. No matter how well or how poorly I trained before, I know I have the foundation, so it's more about paying attention to the little technical details.
In the men's 200-meter freestyle, China's Zhang Zhanshuo emerged victorious in the final that included Paris Olympic 100-meter freestyle champion Pan Zhanle and Germany's Lucas Martens, who holds the Olympic gold and world record in the 400-meter freestyle. 18-year-old Zhang gradually took control of the race and extended his lead to claim the title for Shandong in a personal best 1 minute, 44.53 seconds. Martens picked up the silver, Australia's William Patrick took bronze, and Pan placed fifth. The women's 200-meter butterfly featured a battle between two rising Chinese teenagers and the USA's Regan Smith, the Olympic silver medalist in this event. 13-year-old Yu Zidi from Hebei grabbed the lead after the first 50 meters and never looked back, en route to clocking a new personal best of 2 minutes, 5.71 seconds. 8-time Olympic medalist Smith settled for silver in 2 minutes, 6.28 seconds with 15-year-old Chang Mohan third. The women's 800-meter freestyle fast heat was also a tight contest with Li Bingjie, Yang Peiji and Australia's Lanny Pallister forming a lead pack that remained together into the final 100 meters. Li then pulled away to snatch the gold for Hebei in 8 minutes 16.27 seconds. International athletes have spoken positively on the China Open Swimming Championships. They say the event in Shenzhen is a top-tier competition and a vital platform for cultural exchange between Chinese and international swimmers.
I mean, I've really liked being here, been able to use some of my Mandarin. That's been the most fun part, is just getting to talk to people.
I've been enjoying it so much. It's my second time in China. First time I was in Shanghai. So I always like coming here, and it's a great experience I've seen a little bit of the Chinese culture as well, and meeting more people, working with some of the Chinese people, and just really a lot of fun and enjoying it a lot.
I like the country. Was never in China before, so I like racing here and hope to have a good time here.
The 4-day event is running in the southern Chinese city through Sunday. In snooker's World Open in Yushan, Jiangxi Province, China's Wu Yizhe mounted a strong comeback to beat British world number 2 Karen Wilson 5-2 and reach the quarterfinals. Wilson made a faster start with a 1-12 break to take opening frame, then edged the scrappy second 74-33. Wu responded by raising his level firing breaks of 80 and 59 to draw level at 2 before the interval. After the restart, Wu won a tactical fifth frame 69-20 to lead for the first time. The 22-year-old extended his lead with a century in the sixth. Wilson scored 57 in the seventh but was forced into safety, and Wu cleared to close out the win. He will face Mark Allen next. Wu said he stayed composed in the final frame by focusing on one ball at a time.
In the final frame, I didn't try to force the scoring because I knew even if I lost, I would still be leading 4-3. I still focused on taking it one ball at a time, and I think I executed pretty well.
In another high-quality match, 7-time world champion Ronnie O'Sullivan defeated 2005 champion Sean Murphy 5-3. O'Sullivan took the first with a 96 break, but Murphy responded with a 139. They shared the next two to make it 2-2 at interval. O'Sullivan edged ahead 3-2 with a 121 break, but Murphy leveled after an O'Sullivan error. O'Sullivan then punished Murphy's missed long red with an 89 to lead 4-3 and sealed win with a 67 break after another Murphy miss. O'Sullivan will face Ryan Day in the quarterfinals.
Thank you very much. That was Yang Guang with sports. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in culture and entertainment, China recognizes a new national historical and cultural city in the southwest.
From north to south, east to west, people in China are chasing their dreams and leaving their mark. Want to know how they beat the odds and made a difference? Footprints brings you the true life stories of their journeys.
Now it's 52 minutes past the hour, turning to culture and entertainment. China has officially recognized a new national historical and cultural city in the southwest. An announcement from the State Council designates Meishan in Sichuan province with this prestigious title. The government notice highlights Meishan's long and significant history, its profound culture, and its rich, well-preserved heritage. Officials particularly note the city's traditional features and distinct regional characteristics which hold great historical and cultural value. Known historically as Meizhou, the city is famed as the hometown of great Song dynasty poet Su Shi. The approval requires local authorities in Sichuan province and Meishan to strictly implement cultural relics protection laws. Their duties include further exploring the city's heritage value, clarifying the ancient layout of Meizhou, and strengthening the protection and utilization of these cultural assets. The film plus concept in China reflects a shift from focusing solely on box office performance to recognizing the value of the entire ecosystem. Fu visits leading film technology suppliers to explore how cinematic innovation is powering industries beyond the screen.
You've seen them. The $1 million movie mashups, the Grammy-winning shots all over your feed. They look like they cost a fortune, right? But is that really so? Very cool. Do you know how many people it takes to have such a cinematic shot? The answer is no one but myself. This is an intelligent robotic arm developed for the sets of blockbusters, capturing impossible angles in films like the car racing hit Pixels 3, which was the Spring Festival box office champion. Meet Li He. He's a veteran special shorts director who's worked on countless films. But years ago, he hit a wall, one built by foreign equipment manufacturers.
In the early days, I worked with foreign equipment and crews. We talked a lot, but they kept saying it couldn't be done, or that you don't understand film, you don't understand technology.
But Li thinks differently. In his view, technology should never stand in the way of creativity.
If high technology restricts thinking, then it's not real technology. True high-tech doesn't limit. It opens up a whole new space for more people, including artists and creators.
With his deep knowledge of filmmaking and incredible supply chain in China, Li started developing equipment like the high-end cinematic motion control robotic arm. These products deliver complex cinema shots with precision and speed that humans can hardly match. And that's not all. And here's where it gets really interesting. This technology isn't confined to film sets, it's spreading fast. Now the same tech that films movies is also filming tourists at scenic spots. Scan a code and a robot shoots your personal movie movement. In universities, film students practice on the exact same robots they will use on tomorrow's massive sets, and e-commerce merchants love these cool frames to demonstrate their products for better profit.
That was Kitchen Food reporting. A major new exhibition showcasing the golden age of China's Han Dynasty has opened in Hong Kong. The majestic Han, a golden age of vigor and cultural integration, features 252 pieces and sets of invaluable exhibits. The display offers a sweeping look at the Han Dynasty, a period celebrated for its vitality and its role in bridging Chinese and Western civilizations. Of these, 203 artifacts come from 29 museums and cultural institutions on the Chinese mainland. They include 40 Grade 1 cultural relics, most of which are making their Hong Kong debut. The remaining 49 pieces are significant Han Dynasty archaeological finds unearthed locally in Hong Kong. Hong Kong Development Secretary Benedict Lin says visitors will discover a fresh perspective through the narratives conveyed by the artifacts. Now it's 57 minutes past the hour, checking the forecast for the day. Beijing is down to 1 on Friday evening. Saturday will be cloudy with a high of 16. Shanghai will be overcast with a low of 7 tonight, tomorrow cloudy and 16. Chongqing will be overcast with a low of 12 tonight, tomorrow cloudy with a high of 21. Nanchang will see light rain with a low of 10 tonight, tomorrow thunder shower and 18. Lhasa will be cloudy with a low of 2 tonight, then overcast with a high of 12 degrees Celsius. That's it for this edition of the Beijing Hour, making news today. The World Trade Organization warns that the Middle East tensions could threaten global trade and growth. On behalf of the staff, this is Tianlu in the Chinese capital, hoping you'll join us for the next edition of the Beijing Hour and open a window to the world together.
Find the Beijing Hour at precisely 6 p.m. Beijing time. We meet you on podcast and on air every weekday. The Beijing Hour, your window on China and the rest of the world.
He can't live without the Yellow River in his eyes.
The Yellow River is so noble and elegant.
Both my grandpa and dad made a living from the river.
Would you like to move away from the Yellow River?
I don't think I will. I love it so much.
The Yellow River, the second longest river in China, is regarded as a shaping force in the history, economy and culture of northern China. Today, about 100 million people live within its water basin, making up nearly 9% of the country's population. How is climate change felt at its headwaters, and what are the locals doing to cope with it? What are the descendants of the boatmen doing? What has kept some people from leaving their home village by the river, and what has drawn others back? Could the fading fishing community revive in a time of digital transformation? From 2021 to 2024, our reporters visited the upper, middle and lower reaches of the Yellow River, talked to the herders, farmers, boatmen, fishermen and eco-activists who share a close bond with the river, and present their stories in pictures, podcasts and videos, all in our 12-part series, The Yellow River Mosaic, available only on CGTN Radio